Dwayne Glad was born in 1939. In 1939, it was the start of World War II. A gallon of gas was 10 cents. The Wizard of Oz premiered on the big screen, and the World's Fair opened in New York City. Marlene Merritt was born in 1940. In 1940, the average house was $4,000. Germany invaded France in World War II. Captain America comic book came out. Nylon stockings were all the rage in the stores. Marlene and Dwayne were married on September 7th, 1961 in the Logan Temple, and they had 5 beautiful children. This is the story of Dwayne and Marlene Glad.
My name is William Dwayne Glad. I was born in Salt Lake City in 1939, at the very beginning of the Second World War. So the first 5 years of my life was when the war was going on. It was an interesting time. I remember when planes would come over and all the kids would get scared because they thought either the Germans or the Japanese were invading. And we used to trenches and play, army games, and so on and so forth. Okay, and when I was 10 years old, my mother passed on from a massive heart attack, which was very traumatic for my father, my older brother, and I. There were just 3 of us. So we went for several years where my dad was mom and dad for us, and it was very difficult. He had to go to work, and the 2 of us had to go to school. And finally, he remarried, and the woman he married with, he had a second son, so there were 3 of us in the family, 3 children in the family. I went to South High School, graduated in 1957. My high school experience was what you would call very unusual because I was super shy. I didn't do anything in high school. I went to classes, did very good in the studies, but I didn't join any clubs. I was thinking about playing football one time, but I had a job and I couldn't pay for the car I had if I went to football. After I graduated from high school, I went on a mission in 1959 and served through 1962 in the Central Atlantic States Mission. After I got home from my mission in 1961 in the spring, I met Marlene, and we were married on September the 8th, 1961. We were supposed to be married in November, October. Yeah. When I was reading the newspaper and I discovered that my National Guard unit, President Kennedy had activated my National Guard unit for a year. So I told Marlene, I asked her if she was okay to wait for a year when I got home. And she said, no way, I've got you. You're not going to get out of that. So I got on the phone and had to call up her parents who lived in Star Valley, Wyoming, dairy farmers, and talked to her mother on the phone and told her that something had come up and that we were going to have to get married earlier than we anticipated. And I could hear her and the phone drop. And finally I was able to explain to her that my National Guard unit had got activated and that we're okay, we're still going to be married in the temple. So we're married in September the 8th, 1961. 2 weeks after we're married, we went on a honeymoon. A week later, I went to Texas, Fort Sam Houston, Texas. No, Fort Hood, Texas, where I served for a year there with Marlene. So our first year essentially was spent in the Army. When we got done with our year, she was pregnant with our first child. We moved back to Salt Lake. Professionally, I worked for the Utah Department of Transportation. They had a program that they had where they would provide for your education if you would work hard and take the classes that they had with the university. A lot of it was correspondence, and every week we would go to the university every year we'd go to the university for 3 or 4 weeks and take classes. After I did that for about 12 years, Finally was able to sit for the civil engineering license examination with the state. All-day test. I was in my 40s and all of these young guys just graduating from college were all sitting there and I'm this really old guy. I was able to pass that examination, became a civil engineer, then worked the remainder of my career in the structures division, working with bridges, making sure that the inspection program I was in charge of, making sure all the bridges in the state of Utah were safe. I'm retired in 2001 after 30 years with the Department of Transportation. I have had various experiences. When I first come home from a mission, I was called to be the scoutmaster, so I worked with the scouts. I have served during my lifetime 5 times as a young men's president and as a scoutmaster. I was given the Silver Beaver Award by Boy Scouts of America for my service. I've served as young men's president 5 times. Did I say that already?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, you said scouts.
Elders Quorum president once, high priest group leader 3 times, bishop's counselor, served on the high council under 3 different stake presidents, and served as bishop for 6 years. So it's been a great ride. Marlene had to sit in sacrament meeting lots of times, get the kids ready, bring them to sacrament meeting, sit there while I conducted the meeting. Retired in 2001. Marlene and I have served 2 missions. We went to the Nauvoo and served the temple mission where we served as ordnance workers in the Nauvoo temple. That was in 2005. And then later we went and served 18 months on Temple Square as a visitor center, working specifically with the sister missionaries and facilities, and that was a great experience. We've had a great retirement. I love my wife very much, and our 60th wedding anniversary is coming up soon.
This is Marlene Glad. I was born in Star Valley, Wyoming. My parents grew up in Star Valley, Wyoming, and they met at a dance in Star Valley, Wyoming, and they fell in love and got married in the Logan Temple. And then it's a funny story, they had to travel from Logan to Star Valley, and they had very little things. They had chickens. I remember my mother said somebody gave them some chickens for the wedding, and they had a little jalopy, and it was a hard trial to go there. I was born in 1940, and I was kind of a shy child. I was a middle child, and there was 3 boys and 5 girls, but there was 3 that had passed on by the time I was 7. So 2 of them I never met.
So there were 12 children.
Yes, there were 12 children. And so, 11. Anyway, so we had farm games. I remember my father would say, if you can go and pick up all these boards and pull the nails out of them, you can have a big bonfire. So that's what we'd do. We would go on the farm and pick up all of the boards that had got scattered around broken buildings and things and pull the nails out so they could use the boards. And then we could have that big bonfire with some of the wood that wasn't very good. And we'd play Red Rover around the bonfire, and we'd jump in the ditch and hide. I remember that it was hard to jump in that ditch and keep hiding while somebody was trying to find us. And so we were all raised to be musical. My sisters all played the piano and plus another instrument. I chose to just play the piano. And I don't know why the boys didn't, but they sang good. But we had family night nearly every night. I helped with the milking, and I helped with feeding the little calves, which I didn't really like. I remember I would take the powder and the water and the bucket and mash it with my hands so it would mash and mix up for the little calves and put their nose in the bucket. When I went to school, it's unbelievable, but I went in a covered wagon. It was about 1.5 miles. And they actually had horses pulling a wagon, and we had a little pot-bellied stove in the middle of it. And they would go those many miles that way. Then as I got older, we got a station wagon, which I thought was really cool that we finally got that. I loved to go to seminary in high school. It's one place I could feel accepted and happy. I loved to do choir in high school, even though I didn't sing real good. I loved to sing in the high school choir and do the plays that we did. Then I graduated and I went to business college in Salt Lake City. I got a job in the Star Valley Swiss cheese factory when I was about 17. And at night, I would go to and pack the cheese in boxes. After I'd gone to business college a little while, I met Dwayne at the LDS dances. He just got home from his mission. Well, I was telling my girlfriends that week, I think I'll go on a mission. So they says, well, let's go to the singles dance. And so we went to the singles dance. And I pointed out on the floor and said to one of my roommates, see that guy out there that has that baby face? He's dancing with all those girls. And there was one girl that had this black, nice looking dress. And she was going out with all the guys onto the dance floor. She had long blonde hair and was that kind of girl that was so attractive. Well, my husband decided he would stand here with the boys and the girls would stand over here. So he decided to be brave and walk over. He had his eye on that girl to ask her to dance because she had finally got there where she wasn't dancing. And just as he got over there, then he reached his hand out and she was gone. And so he reached his hand out and it was me when he says, can you dance? Well, we went out on the dance floor and we danced, and that was nice. And I danced the second dance and he says, oh, that's been nice. And he started to lead me off the dance floor. And I said, no, we got to do some more. And not just 2 dances. So we danced until it was the end. And he asked me, well, where do you live? And I says, up on the avenues. And he said, well, you got a way home? And I says, oh no, I have to walk home all that way in the dark. And my roommates have a ride home, but I don't. So he drove me home in his little Anglia car. And he walked me to the doorstep, and we didn't have a kiss, but he says, well, I'll call you sometime. And I says, no, you won't. I says, that happens too many times. So he says, okay, I'll make a date with you. I says, yeah, you have to make a date with me before you leave. So he made a date with me and we went to the movies the next Saturday. And then we just kept going out and nearly every night. And one night I called him and I says, we agreed we'd seen each other a little bit too much. So I agreed he was in the National Guard. And I says, okay, well, guess what? That night I called him up on the phone and says, I gotta see you. It had been only a day or so. So that all turned out until we were engaged. We got engaged on July the 4th. I remember we walked up to Timpanogos Cave with his cousin and his girlfriend. And we went to see the fireworks in Liberty Park. And it was July the 4th. And we were sitting on a blanket, and I put the blanket over my head and his head. And then he was trying to say, we've been going together for a long time. Will you marry me? And I all of a sudden got scared, and I didn't answer him for a minute. Here I'd almost asked him engagement. And I got cold feet and I almost didn't say yes at that time. He says he panicked a little before I answered and said yes. So we got married in Temple in September. That's what he said. He called my parents and and he had to write a letter to my parents of acceptance, and he couldn't remember how to spell my name because we hadn't been going together very long. My mother had been in the hospital for an operation up at the university, and so we went up there. I took him up there to introduce her to me, and that's when I says, we got engaged. He gave me a box of chocolates in the parking lot, and we were going to see my mother, and he says, open the chocolates. And then he pointed at one and says, open that. And then there was the ring. So then I had to tell my mother I got her a ring and was engaged. And she says, well, you got to write to your dad for permission. I don't know if we still have the letter, but he said, my hand in marriage. And then my father, I think I've got the letter where he wrote back and said, it's okay. So anyway, I taught in primary. I played the piano in primary. I played the piano in Relief Society. Then they finally released me from being the pianist in Relief Society, and I was called to be the second counselor in Relief Society. One of the only jobs I had that wasn't a missionary job. I enjoyed the beautiful 2 different missions that we went on, and learned so much about life and the church. I would go up to people on Temple Square and ask them if they knew about the church and if they'd want to know more about it. And so the president of the mission said that was a good way for the sisters to do. So they started doing that.
Marlene and I, we'd like to take this minute and talk a little bit about our family. We have 5 kids and 19 grandkids. So with 3 of our grandkids married, we're at 31 now, and going forward, 1 great-grandchild. Our oldest son was William Todd Glad. He's one of our redheads. We have 5 children, 4 of them are bright redheads. He is our first child. We expected more. I think we're harder a little bit on our first child. Todd was a outstanding young man. Sometimes a little bit trial for us. We loved him very much. It was wonderful to be able to spend time at scout camp with him and to give him advice, which he took pretty well. He was great. We loved him. We're really proud of the way he's turned out. He's in his almost 60 now, and he has 3 wonderful children, and we love him very much.
Melody, she was such a blessing. In those days, you didn't know what you were going to get because you didn't have the ultrasounds then. And so when it came out, a little red-haired girl, so sweet, and she's grown up to be so great, and she always would feel so for the kids, for each other. She would always stand up for the kids if they were in trouble. And that was one thing I remembered about her. She became a very good art.
And I'd like to say 2 things about Melody that shows her character. Todd didn't always do what we wanted him to do, so we were figuring out some ways that we could get his attention without doing any spanking or whatever. So we decided we would have him skip dinner one time, and we just gave him some bread to eat. And we were gone, and everything was fine. And then we found out that not giving him a full meal didn't work because Melody snuck some food into him. She felt so sorry for him.
She opened the back window.
And opened the back window so he could get out. And then another case, when she was in high school, she and her husband that she has now, we'd interviewed each of the kids and set guidelines and rules that they made, and then we'd interview all of them once a month. I wouldn't talk about how things were going. So she knew what the rules were, and she had agreed to them and expected them. So it was high school graduation, and she came home a little bit after the time that we had agreed that she would be. And so we talked about it, and she said, well, Dad, I broke the rule. I should be punished some way. And okay, Melody, what do you think the punishment should be? And she said, well, I'll probably be grounded. Okay, how long do you want to be grounded for? Well, a couple weeks. Well, okay, that's fine. And then her best friend across the street in a week or so was having a party, and she didn't go, and I couldn't figure out why. So I said, Melody, why aren't you going to your friend's party? And she said, Dad, you forgot I'm grounded. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting, that's the kind of person that she was. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about Clay. Okay. Clay's a wonderful son.
He always felt for other people so deeply, and very strongly he would tell his opinion,
Yes.
very straight.
Yes. There's one story I like to tell about Clay, and that's when he was 3 years old. I was mowing the lawn, and as I was mowing the lawn, I came around, I noticed that Clay was standing looking at me as I came around, sticking his tongue out like this, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I went around again, and he was there looking at me, sticking his tongue out like that. So I stopped and knelt down and looked at Clay in the face and said, Clay, why are you sticking your tongue out? And he said, Dad, when I grow up and I mow the lawn, I want to stick my tongue out just like you do. So he's very musical, loved to sing, was president of the choir in the community, Salt Lake Community College. And
After Clay came, Angel came a few years later. So it was like Angel had 3 parents besides me, and so they taught her a lot and took her places, and they were all older than her, and it was wonderful. Angel grew up to be so smart because she had all that learning from them, and she was somewhat spoiled when she was little, but she grew up to be so great, and she was so musical and so good. She's a choir director in her ward, and she even directed a choir in the Los Angeles Temple of Dedication, and she raised 6 wonderful children.
it was a multi-state choir at the rededication.
And she had 3 kids of her own, and she has adopted 3 other wonderful children.
Okay.
Now it's Bruce's turn.
Now Bruce is our special youngest child. We were in our 40s when he was born. It was a kind of a surprise. We didn't anticipate that. I was serving as bishop at the time. He was, because of the RH factors that we had, he was born very premature. Doctors told me at one time that his heart stopped, and we gave him a blessing, and that was okay. And then the doctors came and told me that because of his breath, his lungs being not developed fully, that he wouldn't be able to do anything.
His brain might be affected.
And then they said a little blood vessel broke in his brain, and the brain wouldn't be affected. We brought him home and discovered when he was about 4 that he was hard of hearing.
No, 2.
Okay, he was hearing impaired.
2.5, and I
Hearing impaired.
wouldn't face it.
Yeah. So we went to school for the deaf. And he did well. He went his whole life with people giving him a bad time because he was wearing hearing aids, and he was red hair, and he had what's called deaf speech. He couldn't hear the consonants, so his speech was a little bit different than other people. So he's a wonderful kid, and he's doing great. He has 2 children now, and works with autistic children, and is a very understanding and kind and loving son. So
You've just heard my story, but I want to tell you, I have a testimony of the church, and the church has been my life. My dad was a bishop. I remember that when I was a little girl. My husband was a bishop, and I have always had a testimony, but it's grown as I got older. And I got married in the temple and tried to encourage my daughters to get married in the temple, which they did, and my sons to get married in the temple, which they did. And it's been a great life for me. And I love music. Every time I touch any word, I'm always end up being in music or in the music chairman. And I love that because I love music. It touches my soul, and my testimony has grown through music. and I love the ward I'm in, and I love my family, and I love to play music and do it daily. I love my neighbors and my friends. I'm so pleased with my life. I hope that you can have as good a life as we've had. Yes, I've had 3 operations in my life, but I feel lucky that I can go bike riding and have fun. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Okay, I'd like to give my children and my grandchildren some advice. Our 60th wedding anniversary is coming up soon. I've loved Grandma all my life. We're still sweethearts. It's like it's been a long honeymoon. There's a couple things I've learned. The most important 3 words you can say to your wife is, yes, dear. That's 2 words. Yes, dear, you're right. The other thing is you have to remember, another little phrase, happy life, happy wife. And the most important thing that you can do to yourself is to be good, kind, and loving, and have a strong testimony of the gospel.